Hey guys, another day, another video. Today we are removing a transmission and replacing a torque converter in a 2012 GLK350, but this applies to your C class as well, the 204 and the 207, which is the coupe slash convertible. Aside from, I will list here, but nonetheless, let's get started. First things we want to do is put the car in neutral, release the parking brake, and remove the ground line to the battery. I'll show you the part numbers and the tools first. Here we go. Okay, I supported the vehicle on jack stands about as high as those little guys will go. We're going to remove the panels underneath and just the two back ones. There's one up front here that goes along the front of the car. We're just going to move the two flat ones. All right, we did all that. Now we're going to remove the oxygen sensor electrical connectors on both sides and remove them from their bracket. We're just going to basically get them entirely out of the way. It's going to be a lot of close-ups, sorry about that. We got the oxygen sensors out of the way, and you're going to want to film those to follow them where they lead back to the engine, just to make sure you're able to put them back where they go and whatnot. Next thing, we're going to move this bracket, these two bolts, and these two here, and take this thing off. All right, now we're going to remove this heat shield right here, and to do that we first remove this electrical line from the clip and then this bolt, and it comes down. You want to pay attention on installation that it actually slides up middle of your screen underneath that black leaf spring. Whoops, I didn't show you, but I just removed the electrical connector behind it. All right, now it's time to remove this ground line, 13, and on the other side, that's an E13 Torx, middle of your screen. All right, it's time to support the transmission now. I'm just gonna use this, I don't know what you're gonna call this, a 2x2 that I cut to put on one of the corners, and it should hold up. As long as it's on the corner, it should be good enough. Like so. Okay, it's time to remove the cross member. We gotta first remove these 3 13 millimeters for the transmission mount. 3 E13s on this side, 3 on the other, and we're of course gonna slowly lower it onto our support, which I don't have up right now. All right, and 2 16 millimeters for the trans mount. Let's remove those and take that off. Okay, now it's time to mark the propeller shaft, and we want to mark it up against, you see that brown metallic opposite propeller shaft. Maybe put a mark on there and then put a mark somewhere where this balance weight is attached to the drive shaft here, because we're going to put it in the same position when we install it. Now, I actually, at around 150 to maybe 180,000 miles, these things, these flex discs, begin to crack. I wish I could show you a good example. This front one doesn't have it, the rear has it. It's the same part number, so I'm replacing both of these. And then we're going to remove these bolts and nuts behind them. All 6 all the way around. It should turn freely because you have your car in neutral. Let's get all that off of here. Okay, remove that. Clean the little shaft part here. And on installation, I would recommend putting some clear grease on there. We're gonna zip tie this up to the top here, if I could show you. It's gonna be major. There you go. I'm gonna try and stick a zip tie around there and hold this up and out of the way. That would be great. And the next step is to, if I can show you here, we're gonna get a screwdriver and unclip that, I'll show you, I'm sorry here, the shift rod. So do you see it? Tell me you see it. Yeah, that little clamp in the middle of your screen. We're gonna put a screwdriver in there, take that off, and then release this shift rod. We might have to zip tie that out of the way too. All right, making progress here. Now it's time to pop this cap off here. I'll use my pry tool, and behind it is the 6 torque converter bolts. We're gonna start removing those. Okay, so these new torque converters don't have any rough characteristics on them. So we're gonna have to go to the front of the engine and turn the engine clockwise with a standard 1/2-inch ratchet with a giant socket on it. Now you can't see it, but I can see the torque converter bolts coming up if I turn it a little bit. Maybe I can show you here. So I'm just gonna have to do a lot of going back and forth and estimating when they are gonna be in the proper place. It's a pain in the neck. There, you can sort of see it coming up. That's a bolt right there sticking out at an angle. So we'll try and turn it to that with our best guess. Get those 2 off and then turn it some more, get the next 2 out. And while we're here, on installation, this torque converter has angled bolt, which just means it's going to be a little more difficult than your regular 40 Newton meters tightness. We're going to do it in phases, 4 Newton meters, then 30 Newton meters all the way around, and then 90 degrees. That's how we're going to install this guy. Let's pop off this front cover. Come straight up. So we're going the direction that is not going to bring those bolts I showed you, or that one bolt, but really the pair there that I showed you, into play. We're actually looking for the bolts on the other side, technically speaking here, but nonetheless, I'll turn it about that much, I don't know, and we'll have to check it. Bit of a process here, be patient. Almost there, a little more. And this time I'm going to move it just a tad, so you can't really see, but I'll go about this much. I think the rest we could finesse down there with a larger screwdriver. All right, and yeah, she's coming. Now, of course, I'm gonna pry against the edge of that bolt. I don't think I could show you right now. Let's see, like so, and pry this way to help get both of them in view. And we'll pull those out, and then it's the same process all over again. Back to the top, turn it whatever a third of 360 is degrees to the next pair, and remove those, and so on. Okay, we removed all the bolts, and we made sure we used a screwdriver to make sure that this spins freely from the driver spider. Not sure how much you could actually wedge them apart from each other right now. But now it's time to remove the transmission lines. And here we are. And there's one here and there's one on the other side. But first we're gonna clean them up. And that just means I'm using brake cleaner to spray up and around here. Any small particles are a risk to your entire transmission. So you wanna be very careful about keeping things clean. And then as soon as I remove the bolt and then remove this, I'm going to try and plug whichever is leaking the most off as quickly as possible. 2 plugs, 1 on each side here, and then 1 on each side on the other side. Okay, so I'm removing this trans line. We don't want to bend it, so I'm going to go back, follow it back, and we're going to remove that. And moving ahead, we have one more we want to loosen up. Just trying to show you here on the front of the oil pan right there. Okay, and on the passenger side, if I can show you the last bolt here for the transmission line. All right, so we removed the 3 bolts on each transmission line, 6 in total, and that freed it up, made it easier to get these things out, put some plugs on them. The only difference between the C classes and the GLK I could find was to remove these clamps here, and you're supposed to use, there's one on the other side, a bolt on the other side here, supposed to use a special tool or something to prevent these from breaking. I don't know. I believe it's because you want, this is the left side is the driver's side, is the one that gets the most in the way, quite obvious. And so maybe it's just to make some wiggle room. And now it's time to start removing the flange bolts for the transmission. We're going to start with the starter bolts as the book asks. And so those are up in here on this side. 2 for the starter, and then we're going to want to remove the bracket that goes up and in there. Maybe that holds on some oxygen sensor lines. And we're going to want to keep a couple bolts, one on each side of the transmission, at least hand tight. So I'm going to go with something high on the driver's side, keep one of those in there, and maybe low on this passenger side. Got the starter out. There's the top bolt, middle of your screen. And loosen that first, then remove the bottom bolt. While holding the starter, remove the top bolt and pull the starter out and lay it down gently. Okay, removing this bolt above the starter bolt next, and you can see I'm loosening it. That's the top and last bolt for this bracket. Okay, we're going counterclockwise around this thing. I was able to get the 2 bolts off the top, and the next bolt, we are going to keep that one hand tight or a little bit snug, just to be one of the last 2 bolts holding the transmission in, and then we'll get the one below it. These next 2 bolts actually have nuts sitting behind them. You can see here. Okay, we got those 2 out with the nuts behind them, and now we have only 4 remaining. 2 of them are holding on a bracket. I'm going to want to remove those, and I'll probably remove this guy and leave, of course, the one that I already have in there still left in there, and I'll leave this one left in here as well, just till the very last second. Okay, those last 2 bolts holding it on remain, and now it's time to, actually, first we're going to make sure the starter is not sitting on this transmission line so that we could wiggle this freely. But then we're going to put the jack underneath here, and I'm going to want to place a piece of flat wood on it and loosen the 2 bolts. Pry the transmission flange from the engine in front of it, and then pry the driver spider from the torque converter. Meanwhile, guiding this thing down, I'll try and film some of it for you. Okay, using the jack and a similar piece of prop wood, I stuck that here, and the bottom end on the circular part of the jack. See under that piece of wood, right? So prop the transmission back up a little bit because we have to do this, and fit the cross member back on, just hand tight. Of course, I put the trans mount on there first. Okay, jack is in place, cross member is back out, and now we are, see if I can show you, loosening up this last bolt at the top here, removing it completely, and then we'll get that guy next. I had to pry. You see the torque converter in there? I stuck a large screwdriver in between here and that plate. You could see sort of threatens to fall out. Keeping the shift rod out of the way, and we lifted up the drive shaft over transmission here, and I'm just pulling on the jack backwards, and we cleared the transmission line on this side. The next thing to watch out for is the tight clearance on the oxygen sensors in the bell housing here. Okay, I slid the drive shaft forward and over the back of this transmission here. We're gonna see if we can't push it back a little bit around that other trans line, driver's side. All right, that was it. We did it. Got it around this trans line. Not a lot of down action, a lot of backwards. And keep in mind, this thing is super front heavy right now. We're gonna go straight down and not let this thing fall out. Hopefully we have enough clearance here to pull it out after. Okay, I'm just gonna note how far this torque converter sticks out from the flange. 3/8 of an inch. Torque converter's out, and I just wanted to show you guys, we lost a little bit of fluid. I mean, old one, new one, or I just got this thing off eBay. They give you a VIN number, so I guess you could do a Carfax report. I wiggled it around and kept it on a flat surface and let this settle and check the fluid level in there versus in the one I just got. And I made sure to make sure the new one had the same amount of fluid as the old one. We're just winging it here, guys. I shouldn't even be doing a transmission job in an area with dirt. I'll probably check the fluid level before I drive away anyway. Last thing, we're gonna put some grease around that part before we install it. And then let's put the whole car back together. Hey, congratulations, you did it! Okay, here's how we check the fluid level. Car is completely level first, and we got something to catch the fluid. Start the engine.